Shift podcast, Perspective and Our Power to Change, invites us to expand our lives by changing the lens we see through. Is something different calling you? Do you ever ask yourself, is this all there is? Or have you forgotten why you're even here? Trish and Diane create insightful and empowering conversations about connecting the self, soul, nature, and community. Navigating life by choice rather than circumstance is how we make the shift to expand our humanity. The shift starts now.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of The Shift. It's Perspective and Our Power to Change. I'm your host, Diane McClay, with my co-host, Trish Campbell. And we just want to say thank you again for making the choice to join the family of Transformation Talk Radio and the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group on Fridays to really reframe how you're thinking. In our last show, we were talking about paying attention and drawing up awareness and what was the resistance to capturing our natural intelligence. And we're going to engage that conversation even deeper, and we're going to talk about why it's difficult for us to connect to our internal self with that natural intelligence, and we're going to provide ways that we can step through that and we can empower ourselves. But first, as always, we'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples, the First Nations, the people who resided and provided for themselves on the land from which we operate our businesses and our homes. In my world, that acknowledgement goes out to the Warm Springs tribe, the Nez Perce Nation, the Umatilla tribes, the Confederated tribes of the Grand Ronde. And as always, there are also unnamed tribes, unnamed bands of people that were not federally recognized. But Trish and I feel like it's important to make sure that we honor the people who came before us, because that sets the tone for how we move forward. Trish, I know you have tribes and Indigenous people in your part of the world that you like to acknowledge at the start of the show.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Thanks, Diane. For me, in Mississauga, Ontario, that is the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Ojibwe Chippewa. And like you said, whether we name or unname all of these peoples that came before us, provided us the example and the modeling of connection to Mother Earth, and all of the opportunities we have to live and operate our businesses in these spaces. And it's always good to have that awareness deeper than what we can just see, what's right in front of us. So
right. And if I can tell you a quick story from my weekend that sort of ties it together. We talked about in the last show about it's not just enough to have awareness. It's important that we apply that awareness and we take meaningful action in our lives. I was out for a hike 2 days ago, and I stopped in the sun, and there's this dead oak tree that's right next to me. And as I'm looking at it, there's a fungus or a mushroom kind of growing on the tree. I got my camera out, and I zoomed in a little bit. And I'm like, man, I don't know exactly what that is, but I think that's turkey tail. And sure enough, it was turkey tail. And the awareness that I had at that moment was, man, I wish I knew more about the native plants in my area that I could use to sustain my personal health, my immune system, my mental stability. Turkey tail is actually one of those that you can make a tea out of, and you can do exactly that. But as I was taking in my surroundings, what I realized, that I thought it went right to the show, is how much I actually don't integrate my natural. Even though I go into nature, I don't have the knowledge, the historic knowledge that our First Nation people had, the Indigenous tribes had, about the resources that they lived in and among. And it occurred to me that I need to do a little bit more about that. I need to integrate that into my life.
Yeah, I love that story and I can relate to that too. I mean, I love the connection that you made to your experience, and the turkey tail, taking that deeper than just looking at it in the moment, but really understanding what people, like we honor those people that came before us, these are medicines that are all around us. And it's, because we are part of nature, we are, it's naturally that intelligence is within us to want to explore, but a lot of times it's just easier for us to tune it out and go back to our realities, because that's just comfortable and familiar. But I think that what we're talking about is putting that into action, integrating that. And it doesn't have to be this, oh, I see this turkey tail and now I'm going to go home and make a tea, but just kind of, contemplating that and bringing that back into your regular everyday experience. And then maybe making small steps or small shifts into taking it a step deeper. I mean, that's one way that we can turn our awareness into action and integrate it and apply it in our lives. And I feel like the more that we do, it just keeps building on itself. And you and I work a lot with people who are creating or want change in their life or have been forced into change. And I think as much as we want to change and do things differently sometimes in our life, or positive change or healing, whatever it is, there's still a part of us that resists that. And I think that's where we're taking this conversation today around what is it that is so daunting about going inward. And I just think about when, the pandemic hit and a lot of us were forced to stop doing all of the things that keep us busy in our lives. And we kind of had to come back, and we were we were in isolation. I mean, even if we had our families, it felt isolating because all of our social connection was cut off. And so that's all we have known to kind of put our energy towards. So when it's almost like, I feel like there were a lot of people that didn't know what to do with themselves in that moment. And then, but I saw that as an opportunity to go inward. Like we're almost like, you kind of like hear those nudges from your soul over and over again and ignore them. But this was almost like a forced nudging of, hey, okay, now we're going to do this. Like, here is your opportunity right in front of you. Like, you can't avoid it. I mean,
well, and when we were talking after our last show, two places that we talked about, and we said, man, we need to bring it into the next show, was that nudging. So I heard two things there. One is sometimes there's an inner voice that we just ignore. And then some is that there's this really big nudge, and then some of us don't know what to do with it, and some of us do. In the pandemic, like if you look at, TikTok videos, like there were some really creative, funny, man, this person has way too much time on their hands. If, talks about toilet paper and what they were doing with it in the house. And, it's just like there were some people who accepted the challenge of boredom and isolation. And they said, okay, I have this creative outlet and I need to express it in order to get through this pandemic and in order to get through my isolation. And then there were some other people that I think just don't know that they have that knowledge inside them. And I know for you, you said one of the things that you took the opportunity to do was you really tapped into your creative soul. The picture above your right shoulder is actually something you've done, right?
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how creativity, why are we resistant to the creativity? And maybe what's a step or two that you use as an artist and as a creator? What do you implement in your life to bring that out and to really activate it, integrate it, and take meaningful action on it?
Oh, let me see if I can answer all of that or remember that whole question. But so I think number one, creativity is that direct connection to our soul. And so it's the direct connection to our soul. It can be comfortable and it can feel like expressive, and if we tap into that, but it can also be a little bit scary because it's something that we aren't, we tell ourselves stories, I'm not creative, or I'm not this, or I can't cook, or I don't have a green thumb, or all of these things. And then that keeps us comfortable in doing a life, just keeping the status quo. But so what creativity does is it kind of unlocks some truth. And sometimes the truth is something beautiful, and sometimes the truth is something that's not so beautiful, and it might be painful. But the thing about creativity is that it can hold your hand through that process. And that is what I found through going inward and allowing that, whatever it is, without judgment, to come up out of me, in my hand, with the brush in my hand on the canvas, and just not having any intention of necessarily creating a thing or anything, but just allowing to whatever I was feeling inside to come out. And I think that is the key. And So really, I think one of the things is we're afraid of the potential that's inside of us, that we might be something we thought we weren't, and it might be something good, like not, not necessarily uncomfortable or something to have to hide, because I don't believe we're meant to hide these things at all.
I agree. And I just smiled because you said something really beautiful and I want to go back to it. You said creativity can hold your hand when you're going through some tough times or things that are scary or unsure. And the image that I had in my hand, Pooh and Piglet, those
Mm,
are two characters that I read about when I was a kid. And there's a quote where Piglet, who's always unsure of himself,
mm.
says to Pooh, Pooh, with a question mark. And Pooh says, yes, Piglet. And Piglet says, nothing, as he took Pooh's paw. I just wanted to be sure of you.
Oh,
And I'm
I love
thinking,
that.
man, like if we just said, if you just heard this, hello, so and so, I'm creativity. Would you like me to hold your hand today? Man, that's powerful. Like
Yeah.
if we just saw creativity as a friend that we haven't reached out and connected with in a while, like think of the last time that you picked up the phone and you're like, man, this person's been on my mind. I need to text them or I need to call them or write them a letter. And then think of how you feel after you make that connection. What if creativity is literally right there waiting for you to just take its hand and take a step forward?
Yeah. And I believe it is. I believe it is. And I think we don't realize that that's there for us, and it's natural, and it's inherent, and it looks different for everybody. And that's the beauty of it. So I think we think it has to look a certain way, and, oh, well, I could never paint like so-and-so, or I could never sketch like, I mean, I know so many beautiful artists, but everyone has their own unique expression. And we, just like we all do as humans, but that, I think, tapping into and opening up to our creativity is a doorway to, it's almost like a safety net, that we can know that we can go inward, and even if it doesn't feel good, there's, like I said, there's something there to hold us through it and bring it and carry, walk with us through it. And that's the creativity. And I feel like, we're talking about resistance, and so, this practice that I had was more of a ritual, like I set this as a weekly thing to do for myself, especially during the pandemic when we couldn't go out. And so I had a date with myself to paint, and I did that every weekend. And I ended up with a collection of art that I ended up like, so I've become an artist, like unknowingly, unintentionally, just allowing myself to walk inward and allow myself to express, allow my soul to be expressed through art. And um there was something else I was going to share with that, about that too, but I lost it. It'll come back.
Well, maybe I can fill in when we were talking about rituals, we prior to the show we were talking that we can have rituals that feed us, and then we can have rituals that move us forward, and we have rituals that kind of hold us back. So
Right.
one ritual might be retreating into a digital game on your phone and getting really focused on trying to get to the next level and not really engaging with people around you. For some people, for some time, that could be a good ritual, but it could also be an isolating ritual. But
Mm,
you had mentioned that there were a couple components to a ritual that really make it move you forward. And one was that it had to be positive,
mm.
right? So I could make a ritual of going out and having a lot of drinks every night, but maybe that's not going to create the best outcome for me in the long run. But you had mentioned, so what are the other components of the ritual? What, it has to be positive, it has to be meaningful. What else would you say part of a ritual has to be in order to move
I
us forward?
I would say it would offer some deeper wisdom about yourself, and that something that you can apply in your life um to expand and to just be more in your own empowerment. I think that going inward, and whatever way we choose to do that. And for me that was art, but it could be gardening, it could be playing guitar, it could be singing, whatever, dance, whatever it is for somebody. And skiing the slopes, we were just talking about skiing. And so that it's that solitude that we have with ourselves that brings the inner wisdom that is our truth. And the more we are in alignment with that, I think the happier that we are, and the happier that we are, in the more love we have for ourselves. And that has been part of the journey too, of going inward and finding that love and uncovering it in those ways.
Yeah, and the parallel I would draw is anybody that has a strong faith has a ritual. They attend a church service or some sort of religious service that feeds them. They look for wisdom that someone is offering them. They share it in community. But at the end or in the middle of the service, there is at some point where there is an internal reflection of whatever that message is that's being delivered. The hope would be is that people are creating this ritual because they want it to enhance their lives. Right now, some people attend religious service because they feel like they have to. And I'd be the first person to challenge someone to say, well, if you're doing it only because you feel like you have to, then you need to change your ritual. Start doing things because you want to, or because you feel like it's going to serve you better. Because just going through the motions and showing up and making it look like you're doing the thing that somebody expects you to do really isn't opening up that internal choice and that internal courage. And it actually builds more resistance. Well, I'm just doing it because I have to.
Right. And that, you said the word internal, and that's the key for me too, around ritual, around, I mean, we're talking about going inward. And I think one of the things, and I'll make that connection because, like you said, going to church or going to a religious thing every week or whatever, it's like it's things in our lives that the ritual component is about tuning inward rather than looking for the answer outwardly and externally. And so that has been one of the biggest spiritual growth I've had around going inward. And I think that's why we go inward. It's a spiritual practice. And not a religious practice. It's spiritual meaning it's a connection with your soul, with yourself, and everything. I believe everything we need, we have already within us. We've been conditioned and taught that we have to look externally for everything. That's why we're so, busy keeping ourselves busy, because, there's the answer is outside somewhere. And at least for me, that's what I thought for a long time. As long as outwardly everything looked good, then I was doing well in life. And it's like, but why was I still feeling unfulfilled? And so for me, that's the, that, and probably a long time, there was a resistance to going inward that I didn't even realize. It's kind of an underlying thing that we don't have the awareness of until we do. And so I think because that resistance exists, because there's part of us that wants to stay safe and familiar and not go into the unknown. But the unknown is where all the possibility is.
Yeah. When I left my state parks job, a friend of mine sent me a magnet that is on my fridge to this day. It has never moved from the day that I left. And it says, life begins beyond your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And, to some people that might mean, oh, I have to be an Olympic skier and, fly up a hill at 82 miles an hour and do crazy tricks in the air. Well, that may be for some people, but when we're uncomfortable, that's really an invitation to go inward. And we have a tendency to isolate ourselves from the discomfort. Ooh, that feels weird. I'm going to go get busy doing something else. And I can tell you that in the clients that I've worked with, and I think it would be true for you too, when I have the ability to invite a client to go inward and I can help them to discover things about themselves in a safe way, in a way that makes them feel empowered rather than kind of fearful. I've never had a client say, I want to go back to the old way I was thinking and being and doing.
Right.
I mean, I've never had someone say, wow, I've got all this new awareness and I feel empowered and I went inward and I like what I saw, or I don't like what I saw, but I can live with it. But that's not really for me. I just want to go back to my old way of staying in my cocoon and not living in the world. I've never had anybody say, I want to go back to the old way that I was existing.
Yeah.
Right.
Once you've made that change. Yeah. And it's the point of, when people are at the point of making that change is when the pain of staying stuck where they are outweighs the pain of doing something differently. So the discomfort of that. And I mean, I think anyone can relate to that. And once you, like you said, once you start going on that path, it just builds on itself, like anything does. Like you can't, why would you want to go back? Like it just, for me, I've had opportunities, and there's been moments where I thought, oh, it would be much easier if I could do this instead of what I'm doing now, or go back to, the way I was working and living before. But like, it's not even an option now, because I'm so, on that, I've taken too many steps in a path of the unknown.
Right.
And
right.
That's where the possibility is. That's where the expansion is. That's where our, inner joy and happiness really is. It's not somewhere outside of us.
I'm thinking about my own journey, and I think that there was a point in time where I was searching for a lot. I was searching for that one thing that would make me feel better about myself, that one thing that would fix me. And you can go through a lot of training programs, a lot of self-help classes, and a lot of coaching exercises, but that's still that concept of going to other people to find out what you have in you. When I connected to coaches who challenged me to go inward, who held me accountable when I started to see things inward, and then who also were there to reassure me and tell me that everything that I had inside of me was part of me. It was a gift. It wasn't something to run away from. It was something to embrace. And I love how you talk about possibility and expansion. Those are two words that are really important to me, and they're just energetically. It's why I asked the question, what if and why not? What if I were to look at this a different way, hence the perspective shift, and why not try something new or try something different?
Right.
What
Yeah.
I know now is it's all inside me. Like, I'm okay.
Yes.
I am me.
And I think, you said something about to fix ourselves, or what, like we think we have to fix, like that there's something wrong with us, or that we're looking for the next best thing. And that's the society that we live in, that's constantly shouting, programming at us that, whether it's to lose weight or to get fit or eat clean or whatever the message of the day is. And that tells us there's something wrong with us, and that we need to keep chasing whatever it is, the perfect self and all of that. But there is nothing wrong with us. We're not broken, and it's not about fixing. It's about, like you said, we have everything we need inside of us, but sometimes we don't see it, because we tell ourselves this story. And to have people who support you, like a coach or whatever, that is really just filling in the gaps of, like, where between what you can see for yourself, what other people see, the potential that you're not seeing because you're blocked, because you're holding on to a story that you need to fix something. I need to do this now. Okay, now this year I need to make this resolution because I'm not quite good enough in that area, or whatever it is, that's whatever we tell ourselves that keeps us stuck, really.
Yeah. And I think what's coming up for me right now is there's a big difference between the energy and the vibration between trying to fix something and the energy and vibration of trying to heal, like an old trauma. We're not saying that, trauma,
Right.
That we all have things that happen to us sometimes. And it's important to get the help you need to work through that in a healthy, meaningful, productive, self-aware kind of way. I'm not saying that, that there's, just because you look inside doesn't mean that there's not things that need a little bit of tune up every now and
Right.
then, but to really get rid of this notion that we're broken and we can't possibly evolve to
Right.
a higher level. That's the thing I think you and I are trying to change on this program with the shift and our power to change.
Right. And that's exactly it. It is, I mean, healing is, we're not saying we don't need healing, or we haven't experienced things in our lives that we can benefit from healing around that. If anyone, I mean, that's the story that I wrote about in oops, I'm trying in Love Me, Smooth Trish. But it's, yeah, it's not that we're unrepairable or broken, and that it's that it's okay that we're chasing we're chasing a myth that doesn't exist, a myth of perfection. But we're also offered an invitation to heal some of those pains and traumas from our past so that we can expand to our greatest potential, because a lot of that is, we might want it to be fixed. Like I've heard people say, I want it fixed, but I don't want to go through the work to do it. I just want it fixed. But the work is really the knowledge and wisdom that's inside that allows us to be healed.
Right. And it's a great circle, right? When we can look inward, then we can see things. When we see things, we can get creative. When we get creative, it gives us the courage to look inward. And then suddenly we have this self-feeding energetic cycle.
Right. And we continue to expand, and we continue to heal, and we come back to the same things we thought we healed from, because those are so deep, and we always visit them from a new perspective each time. So I can speak from experience on that. As much as we think we're done with it, we're not. So it's such an interesting conversation we've let ourselves into. But
right.
I think
and as always, there's always room to expand. I love how you just said that too. And it's true even with our radio show. Every time we have a topic, as soon as we start talking about the topic expands, where we have to bring it into another show, which is what we're going to have to do with this conversation.
Yes.
So in the last minute that we have left, what's the takeaway, the one takeaway that you want our audience to have? And then, how do we lead them out?
I would just say to just take a look at what your activities in your life. And I think the busier we are, the more we give our power away, and the more the more we come inward is the more empowering we can be in our own life, and the happier we can be.
Right. And one way that you can go inward is you can actually go to the Cornelia Stephanie Media Group app, the New House app by KS Media, and you can download it, and you can become a member, and you can be engaged in a meaningful conversation with yourself, because we have a universal question every week that we're putting out to our community, and that you can answer the question in your own private journal, and you can start keeping track of these thoughts that you go inward, write something down, expand, have some creativity. So you can do that, and you can always find Trish and I there. You can find Trish at thisistrish.com, and you can find me at dianemcclay.com. And what we'd like you to do now is expand your mind one more time, two more times, and stay tuned for the Cornelia Stephanie show, Stories of Hope, first, and then after that is Dance, Jenny C. Cohen, Dance to Heal, and I think after that is Dr. Brooke, right?
Dr. Brooke, yeah.
Right. Fridays on TTR, this is where you got to get your information, because we are expanding every single day. I'm going to say thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Shift podcast, where perspective and our power to change intersect. Slowing down to look at things from a different angle is necessary to effect positive change. You hold the power to transform yourself and your life. It is already inside you, and it's within reach. Clarity comes from awareness. Momentum comes from choice. Healing, growth, and transformation happen on the Shift podcast, the first and third Fridays at 12:30 p.m. Pacific. For more information, go to invibe.ca or dianemcclay.com.